Attention, armchair quarterbacks and shower thought GMs. It's time for this week's episode of Sports Ball with Mike Maharrey and Alan Mosley. Man, I love hearing that music.
It's a banger, I gotta say. Probably my favorite podcast music I've ever heard.
Pretty awesome.
We gotta give a tip to the guy that made that. It's pretty good.
It's mad skills right there, man.
Welcome back to the show, everyone. We're gonna do a sports ball segment today, of course, with Tampa Bay sports superfan Mike Maharrey joining me once again. Mike, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. Notice I'm repping my USF Bulls, which is something I haven't been able to do with any pride in several years, so that's kind of fun.
Now, that's not fair because I know for a fact, you being a hockey guy, you're always posting South Florida Bulls hockey propaganda on your on your timeline. So I know that's a lie.
That's fair. Well, then let me clarify. USF football.
Okay,
we're back,
all right,
baby.
Yeah, the whole state of Florida. The whole state of Florida. Well, most of them.
It's like we're back in the 1990s, in the 1980s again.
Well, as my favorite tweet from this past weekend goes, listen, I've been a Tarleton State fan for 20 minutes, so I believed all along that they were going to beat Army. On that note, of course, college football kicked off this past week. Multiple top 10 games, a lot of fun there. Of course, obviously some unfortunate starts to the season out of a few of those teams. Maybe we'll circle back to that. But for today, we're doing the 2025 NFL regular season preview. Mike Maharrey, are you ready?
I am ready. I've got my Tampa Bay Buccaneers flag hanging up outside. I put it up today, getting ready for week 1. So,
okay,
let's do it.
I'm sorry. Quick segue before we do that, since you mentioned that. Where you are in Florida, is it predominantly Tampa Bay fans, or is there like are the Dolphins bleeding over into the area? I'm not even going to say Jaguars because we all know there's no Jaguars fans. What are the demographics down there?
Well, I mean, I'm in the Tampa Bay area, so it's heavily weighted toward Tampa Bay fans. But there are a fair number of Miami fans around here. Mm-hmm. And that just goes back to the fact that Miami was around long before the Bucs even existed. So you've got a lot of those older holdover folks. And then, of course, being such a transient area, we've got a ton of Packer fans, any New York team. You name it, we've got it. I remember one year, this goes back many years ago, but I went to a Bucs Packers game. It was a Monday night football game, and there were literally more Packer fans in the Tampa Bay stadium than there were Buc fans.
I'm shocked and appalled.
I know.
To hear
shocking and appalling.
Send the Bucs to LA, make it a 3-team city. All right. On that note, we're going to start off the NFL season preview with a segment I'm calling Teams Going Up. We're going to pick one for the AFC and one for the NFC. These are non-playoff teams from last year that we think are going to make the playoffs this year. I'm going to kick things off in the AFC, Mike Maharrey. I'm going to say the Cincinnati Bengals. Cincinnati Bengals. So first of all, they've locked in that elite offense for at least the medium future. Yeah, Jamar Chase signs a $161 million extension back in March. T. Higgins, $115 million extension just days later. So obviously the Bengals organization, Hendrickson notwithstanding on defense, the Bengals organization has said, this is our priority. We want to keep that core around our man Joe Burrow. He's got his weapons. The defense is getting revamped. I know a lot of people have said, well, look, that's their porous defense has been their problem for basically as long as Joe Burrow's been there. But when he's been healthy, he's been able to will them into the postseason. But they did sign veteran Mike Pennell. He's a 2-time Super Bowl champion to strengthen the interior. Also a new defensive coordinator this year, Al Golden. He's transitioning from coaching from college to the NFL. Last year, they were the 7th worst in scoring defense. And they were still a competitive team. Like, if they even had an average defense, I think the Bengals are a good team. Last but not least, healthy, motivated Joe Burrow. They were 9-8 last year, and that was again with him still missing a little bit of time, still dealing with the lingering wrist issues and that sort of thing. I have always said that if I was building a franchise today and could just pick one player, my quarterback's Joe Burrow. I've never shied away from that. No Josh Allen, no Patrick Mahomes, no Lamar Jackson, no Jalen Hurts. I'm going with Joe Burrow. What do you think?
I like Joe Burrow a lot. I think my biggest question mark with the Bengals is the same as it's always been. Can that offensive line keep him from not being injured yet again? They were better last year for sure, but that always seems to be a going concern up there in Cincinnati. So yeah, I think you have a healthy Joe Burrow. I like that pick. That's a playoff team to me for sure.
I'll answer your question with a strong maybe.
Yeah, exactly. It's a definite maybe.
All right.
Well, I kind of debated this. I went between two teams, both right here in my home state of Florida for my AFC up-and-comer. The debate was between Miami and Jacksonville, and I settled on Jacksonville because I really like this new coaching staff combined with Trevor Lawrence. Liam Cohen did a fantastic job as the offensive coordinator for the Bucs. He took a running game that was absolutely abysmal and turned it around and made it into one of the top running games in the NFL last year. And I think that's going to be a godsend for Trevor Lawrence. Bless his heart, he has not had the best of luck as far as coaches go. And I think that's going to help settle him down. He's got some guys to throw to. He's got a good running back in ETN. So I really like the offensive potential that's there. They've got a really strong defensive line, and they added a couple of strong defensive players in Eric Armstead and Mason Smith. I think the question mark for them is going to be, can they get off to a decent start? Slow starts have been a problem for the Jags, and they've got a pretty tough schedule early, but that schedule gets a little bit easier down the road. So I'm going to go with the Jags as being a team that has the potential of making the playoffs this year. And did not last year.
It's one of those things where any team that's in a weak division that can just beat the teams weaker than them and maybe split the series with their, if the Jags split the series with the Texans and they take care of business against the Titans and Colts, which I don't expect to be good football teams, that you're 5-1. I mean, you just have to break even across the league. You're a playoff team when you're in those types of divisions. So I do agree with that. I will say, as a final thought before we move on to the NFC, you mentioned the Miami Dolphins. I actually kind of think that this is sort of a make or break year for the Dolphins. I really don't like that phrase, but it's one of those things where it's like, look, if Tua can play 17 games and Tyreek Hill can, to be honest, maybe get out of his own way a little bit. But also Waddle, Jalen Waddle, they need him to play 17 games as well. Look, they've had issues and that's not all on Coach McDaniel, but that team has really been built around his vision. And so they have to be able to produce, at least on that side of the football. If they can, kind of same story there. I don't think the Jets are going to be a great team. I don't think the Patriots are going to magically be better in 1 year under Vrabel. If they could even steal one game against the Bills, you're 5-1. I think it's very possible. Moving on, teams moving up in the NFC. I'm going to go with the San Francisco 49ers. I know our friend Shane is cheering us on at the screen as I said that. First and foremost, they finished last year in their division, which is terrible. But you know what that means for this year? They got the easiest schedule in the NFL. So not a bad way to start the season. They got a lot of winnable games. Early contests against the Saints, Browns, Giants. Got Panthers, Colts, Titans, Jaguars. Come on. That's pretty dang good schedule. They also closed the season with a stretch of 5 home games and only 2 long road trips. So, I mean, there's your momentum going into the postseason right there. Strengthening the defense, which was a little bit of trouble last year. They did trade for edge rusher Bryce Huff, who's reuniting with his coordinator, Robert Saleh. If you remember that name, former head coach of the New York Jets. He's back with the 49ers, where that's how he got the job in the first place. He was a fantastic defensive coordinator. I think he does instantly take that unit and at least move them up a few notches from where they were last year. Finally, you got your talent up front. A lot has been made of their injuries, and there have been a lot of injury issues. A lot have been made of guys like a Christian McCaffrey, who has not been able to produce the way they had hoped. But they still have Fred Warner, still got George Kittle, still got Brock Purdy, still got Trent Williams, still got Nick Bosa. If Christian McCaffrey even has one more year in the tank, then the cupboard is not bare in San Francisco. I think they've got some rising prospects as well. Michael Williams, coming off the top of my head. And again, looking at the division, Seattle could be improved. The Cardinals could be improved. The Rams won the division last year, but they've got an aging quarterback. Look, the 49ers were in the Super Bowl 2 of like the previous 6 years. So it's, again, that's where that team is expected to be, not at the bottom of the division. What do you think for the NFC?
I thought that was, I think that's a great pick. This pains me, but I'm going to go with the Atlanta Falcons, even though they're head to head with my beloved Buccaneers. And, I think when you look at the NFL, it's a coach quarterback league, right? You've got a strong quarterback in Michael Penix Jr. He's going to get to start the entire season. He started out in training camp being the guy. So he's going to have a much better grasp of the system. We're in the second year under Raheem Morris. I like Raheem Morris a lot. He didn't do so great when he was in Tampa, but I think that was kind of a function of him being kind of young at the time to be taking on a head coaching job. So I like that combination. You've got just a big upgrade, I think, from Kirk Cousins. Kirk's one of those guys. I love Kirk Cousins. I respect him greatly, but he's getting old, and he's just not the same quarterback that he was a few years ago. So definite upgrade in the quarterback situation. You've also got a very favorable schedule. You mentioned scheduling. You've got the fourth easiest schedule in the NFL by projections. You've got a team that's in a relatively weak division, although I would argue that the Bucs are going to be better than they were last year. But, we're talking about an Atlanta team that if you go back and you look back on last year, they were right in the midst of the race, right till the very end. They kind of fell apart at the end of the year. But I think, coming into a new season, everybody healthy, I think they're going to be, I think, much more in sync than they were at the end of last year. And I also like the upgrades that they've made on the defensive side of the ball. They picked up a couple of edge rushers, which was a problem for them last year. They couldn't get pressure on the quarterback. So I think that if their defense even improves marginally and Penix takes a step with it being his team and with the offensive weapons he have, I think that that you could see Atlanta do something this year. And I hope they don't, but Gotta go with reality here.
I agree with you on the Atlanta pick. I think when the Falcons drafted Penix, they were thinking he was the quarterback of the future, but a future season, not a future month. when he got the job, but now a training camp with all those first team reps, I think he's going to look pretty good. Moving on to teams going down. These are the teams that playoff teams that made it last year that we think are not returning to the playoffs this year. Starting with the AFC, Mike Maharrey, you're gonna see a theme in a lot of my predictions through the course of the show. I think the Pittsburgh Steelers are not going to make the playoffs this year, amongst many other things that we'll discuss later. Starting with the big drama in the offseason. Aaron Rodgers, would he or wouldn't he? Everyone thought maybe he's going to go to the Steelers, but he didn't sign for a really long time. I mean, even after the draft, it's like, what is his team doing? Who's going to be playing? He does finally put pen to paper. He's 41 years old. He's 41 years old. He had an okay end to his Jets tenure, but overall his Jets tenure was pretty rough. Look, Green Bay didn't want to keep him and he wanted to leave. It was the other way around. And the Jets were more than happy to move on as well. So I somehow doubt it's not like we just saw Aaron Rodgers win MVP and then the Packers were ready to move on. It's been another few years since then. The decline accuracy, arm strength, I don't think he's got it. Offensive chemistry. I mean, who's he even playing with? they've changed so much, and Mike Tomlin's never really been big on the offensive side of the ball to begin with. I mean, I know they brought in DK Metcalf. Who else? And DK Metcalf, to be honest, he's the kind of wide receiver that gives wide receivers that stereotype of a drama queen who is likely to walk off the field if he doesn't get enough touches. So you've got cohesion issues. Also, of course, pass protection. The Steelers haven't had the best pass protection, maybe partly because they haven't had the best quarterback play, but Rodgers is old and he's a statue these days. This is not the 28-year-old Rodgers who's going to pick him up with his legs. Again, other than DK Metcalf, they have very limited talent behind that at the skill positions. And finally, for the Steelers, it's the stakes. It's the pressure. They invested in Rodgers. Tomlin, long tenure, playoff shortcomings recently. The expectations are going to be, look, Pittsburgh wants to compete for championships. They're not competing for wild card spots if we're lucky. They want championships or they got to move on. If Rodgers falters early, if they don't start the season well, I could see it being one of those things where the bottom finally falls out and Tomlin is several games removed from extending his streak of winning seasons.
Yeah, I like that. I think it's a good analysis. So I'm going to go with, I keep wanting to call them the San Diego Chargers. There will ever be the San Diego Chargers in my mind, but to be accurate, the LA Chargers. I think this is a team on the decline, and God bless Harbaugh, but Justin Herbert, I just don't have a lot of confidence in him moving forward. We've seen, there's always been some arm strength issues. We've had a kind of a dip in accuracy over the last couple of years. And, Harbaugh wants to run the ball to begin with. I could see this becoming a team that just really struggles to move the football, because I don't care how good your running game is in the NFL. If a team wants to shut down your running game, they can do it. And if the quarterback can't loosen that up, then you're going to have a lot of trouble on the offensive side of the ball. So maybe Herbert can recapture that elite form. But if not, I think that the offense is going to struggle. And then we have just the depth problem. They have a linebacker problem. They have no depth on the offensive line. If they start losing starters, if you start having injury problems, that's a team that could very quickly end up in the ditch. And they've got a tough, really tough conference. They're in they've got a difficult schedule. And I just, I really didn't have much belief in them last year. They kind of made the playoffs, but I never really expected them to go anywhere. And I would not be surprised if we did not see them in the playoff mix this year.
Yeah, I kind of agree. If for no other reason, they kind of have the opposite issue of teams we talked about before, like with the Falcons, for instance, in that Denver's surging. The Chiefs, last time I checked, still actually have Patrick Mahomes on the roster and Andy Reid as head coach. So I think even with turnover, they're still going to be a contender year after year. Maybe not a serious Super Bowl contender this year. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But I think both of those teams are still head and shoulders better than the Chargers. And if you're the third best team in your division, you're already on the outside looking in. So I agree completely. Moving on to the NFC. It was a really exciting season last year for the Minnesota Vikings. Their rookie quarterback goes down in the preseason with a season-ending injury. Sam Darnold steps up, and what an amazing resurgent year Sam Darnold has. Now, I know what a lot of borderline starting quarterbacks out there are thinking, which is, well, if I was throwing to Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, maybe I'd have a resurgent year as well. But that being neither here nor there, this is J.J. McCarthy's, it's his sophomore season, but it might as well be his rookie season because he didn't start a single regular season game. And this could be, it's a step forward for him, but it might be a step back for the team. He's talented, but obviously he's inexperienced. If he fails to settle in quickly, and then there's issues with waiting some weeks for Addison to get back in the lineup, then I can see them being miles behind both the Packers and the Lions in that division. Same kind of story as we just discussed with the Chargers. And the Bears are on the rise. I'm not necessarily saying that I think the Bears are going to compete this year for a playoff spot, but I think they may compete for third best in that division. Well, where does that put the Vikings? The Packers and Lions, even last year, even during the Vikings' great season, the Packers and Lions, I think, were still clearly better than the Vikings. they could easily find themselves in fourth place this year. And finally, again, schedule and depth concerns, multiple long road trips. They could be in an early season hole with the way their schedule is. Depth at offensive line. Their secondary is still questionable. Look, they were in a lot of shootouts last year that they won. I'm not sure they're putting up half as many points this year, but their defense is still going to be at a shootout, if that makes sense. So yeah, I'm afraid that not only are the Vikings not a serious playoff contender this year, I think the Vikings may not even have a winning record this year.
Yikes. Well, for my NFC down team, I'm going to keep it in LA, man. It's going to be a rough year in LA if you're a football fan. But LA Rams, and really my whole rationale for this all hinges on Matthew Stafford. I think if you get Matthew Stafford of 5 years ago, I think that would be great. I think that the Rams are a playoff team. I don't think you're going to get the Matthew Stafford of 5 years ago. You know, he's 37 years old. He's had a lot of injury issues, and you know, it's a maxim in the NFL. You don't get healthier and better with age. You know, it's just it goes the opposite direction. I really think that Stafford's at the end of his shelf life, and simply put, if Stafford can't perform at that level, there ain't no way that they're going to make it into the playoffs. You know, Aaron Donald retired, so that was kind of their defensive anchor. That's gone. You're putting young players in a situation where they're being asked to step into massive roles. And, you know, that could play out well, but, you know, the odds, again, doesn't generally play off well, especially for first-year players. And, you know, if you have a defense that can't consistently pressure the quarterback or hold leads, it's going to make it tough to win close games. And I think if you have a 37-year-old Stafford, you're going to have a lot of close games because you're going to struggle to score points. And again, we've talked about this a couple times already, but you've got that NFC West. It's a brutal conference. You've got the Seahawks, you've got the 49ers. It's going to be a tough conference, and I could very well see the Rams sitting on the sidelines when playoffs come around.
Yeah, I think the Rams benefited last year because the 49ers basically took a year off from competing. I think the Rams have a lot of talent, and I think the Rams were actually the team best equipped to knock off the Eagles in the postseason last year. But I think we were also witnessing Stafford's last hurrah, which if his last hurrah was last January, then what does that make this year? I think that makes this year we weren't ready to rebuild, and so, you know, load them up with painkillers and get back in there. Yeah. We're going to move on to takes of all temperatures. Mike and I are going to give you a hot take, think massive shift, a mild take, think more of a established team or player maybe doing something you'd like to see them do, and then an ice cold take, which is big shocker. It's pretty much exactly what you'd expect. We're going to start with a hot take. My hot take, in my defense, I had this hot take for months. I know that sports media has been on this the last 30, 60 days, but I said this months ago, so screw them. I say the Denver Broncos win the AFC West over the Kansas City Chiefs.
That is a hot take.
I think, as we've already discussed, I think that Bo Nix is the guy in Denver. I think Sean Payton has found his guy. I think that they only sharpened that this year. Look, their defense is good. Their defense, I mean, what was that last year? They were among the league's best in points allowed and sack totals, which it's a passing lead, so racking up sacks is great. I know a Tampa Bay Buck knows that. I think they're positioned to be a top 5 defense. You know, you think back to the end of Peyton Manning's era in Denver, where, you know, the name recognition, it started off great on offense. As he hit the wall, they tapered off, but they suddenly became an elite defensive unit, and that's when they won a championship. I think that Bo Nix is more than competent to lead. I'm not trying to say that the 2025 Denver Broncos have a defense like the 2015 team, but if they did, Bo Nix is plenty good enough.
Yeah, I like Bo Nix a lot. You have a lot of quarterbacks that come out of college and they're kind of college quarterbacks and they don't
Mhm.
translate to the
Yeah.
NFL. I almost feel like Bo Nix was the opposite. He's an NFL prototype quarterback who maybe underperformed in college. I mean, not obviously he had a good college career, but I
Mhm.
think a lot of people might say, well, he wasn't Cam Ward, he wasn't that electrifying player, and yet his skill set translates very well to the NFL game.
Yeah, I agree.
So my hot take, I went Homer here. I'm going to go with the Bucks hot take. Now, if you watched the Bucks last year, you know that one of the things that they really struggled with was putting pressure on the quarterback. They almost
Mhm.
completely relied on Todd Bowles and blitz packages. I think this year the Bucks defensive line is going to be able to generate that kind of pressure. And I'm going to go out and I'm going to say that we're going to have not one, but two Tampa Bay Buccaneers players with 10 or more sacks this year. And last year they had zero. The guy with the highest number of sacks was Kalijah Cansey, who's actually an interior defensive lineman. He had 7.5. They didn't have any outside pass rushers with more than 7 sacks. But they did add Hassan Reddick in the offseason. And I think that
Mhm.
this is a guy that's motivated. He kind of had a couple of down years. He had some injury issues. He is motivated. He wants to prove himself. Everybody says he's in fantastic shape, and everybody's raving about him. So I could see him with the double-digit sacks. And I mentioned Clancy. Clancy has gone out and he has said that he is going to lead not defensive interior linemen in sacks. He has said he's going to lead the NFL in sacks. I don't think that's going to happen, but I tell you what, he's a handful in the middle there with Vita Vea. And when you have that 1-2 punch with the strong interior rush and you get some outside pressure, I think we're going to see some big improvements in the Buccaneers defense this year.
Amen. If they don't let you touch the receivers or the quarterback anymore, just chase them all over the field. That's the only way. What else can you do? What else
Yeah.
can you do?
Well, and I'll say
Uh,
this too: the Bucks have greatly improved their defensive backfield, which I think is going to help uh, maybe give the defensive lineman a step or two longer to be able to get some pressure on the quarterback.
I'm going to give you a mild take, and my mild take is more of a something that maybe pundits have expected to see over the last few years, and a team finally gets over the hump. I say the Baltimore Ravens will be representing the AFC in the Super Bowl this year with Lamar Jackson at the helm. I mean, for one, Lamar Jackson's at his peak. I mean, he's in the prime of his career. We forget how young he is. He was the guy that, he's like 19, 20 years old, and he's getting drafted to play in the NFL. He's such a young guy. He's had back-to-back MVP level seasons. He won one. A lot of people think he should have won last year, and they just decided it was Josh Allen's turn. But I'll let those people argue about that. He's healthy. He's confident. This is his team. Dual threat ability. We all know what kind of problems he causes for defenses. A hard team to scheme it against. A lot of ground yards. I think if he can finally overcome the postseason yips. But particularly if you have a regressing Kansas City Chiefs team, which I may be predicting we see this year, then this could finally be the year. I'm actually kind of not I think the Bills are going to be a good team. I don't think they're the team. I think the Chiefs will still be a good team. I don't think they're the team. Well, who does that leave? I think the Baltimore, this is their year. Finally, I mean, they have a balanced roster that's built for January football. In a lot of years and across sports, you have those teams that excel in the regular season and then they flame out early in the postseason because it's a different type of sport in the postseason. Defenses, the refs let them play. They swallow their whistles. It's a lot more physical. I know it's like that in hockey. It's like that in basketball. It's like that in football. And that's not treated the Ravens very well in recent years. But they have a punishing ground game. Derrick Henry is actually the example of the guy who got older and has somehow defied the odds. Deep tight end group, improving wide receivers, stout defense, opportunistic secondary, in cold weather, playoff style football. I think that if they can not only perform well enough in the regular season that they're a number 1 seed, if it weren't for a team like the Chiefs, they could have already been, but then they also maximize that opportunity in January. I think this is their year. So I'm not necessarily saying that they're going to win it all, but I do think they finally win the AFC this season.
Yeah, I like that take. One of the things I like about Lamar Jackson, I think there's this perception that he's a running quarterback and he can run the ball. Yeah, I
Mm.
wouldn't want to stand in front of the dude, but he can spin it too. I mean, he's no slouch of a passer, and he's got some weapons around him. So I wouldn't be surprised if that lukewarm take there turns out to be correct. So my lukewarm take is that this is the year that the Detroit Lions make it to the Super Bowl. Maybe they'll play. Maybe they'll get to play your Baltimore Ravens. But
Okay.
you look at last year, and they had a phenomenal year, especially when you put into context the number of injuries that they had.
Yes.
Like, like they were playing with a third or fourth string defensive line at some points. It wasn't just
Mhm.
Ada Hutchinson going out. It's like his backup was out and his backup's backup was out. It was really, really a difficult season. And yet they were still able to push the momentum, to ride Goff's arm, strong coaching. And I think this year, if they can stay healthy, I think they finally put it together, get over that hump, and finally get to see the Detroit Lions in the Super Bowl. And God bless the Detroit fans; they've been waiting a minute for that. So,
Amen to that. A couple of quick cold takes. You're going to be absolutely not shocked at all to hear this. Last year, Mike Maharrey, the Eagles won the NFC East en route to the Super Bowl. You're going to be shocked to learn the Eagles will once again win the NFC East. Deep roster. I mean, they're not a bad pick to repeat in the Super Bowl at all. They're largely intact. They have too much talent to fall off in that division, where I don't think the Commanders are quite there, and the Cowboys and Giants are nowhere. And so their division rivals still are trailing behind. That once again sets them up for a playoff run. Saquon Barkley, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Jalen Hurts. Last year was not a fluke. That is what this team is capable of. So I don't know if they'll repeat. It's hard to win Super Bowls. I don't know if they're going to repeat, but they're damn sure going to repeat as NFC East champions.
yeah. Well, my ice cold take goes right along with that because it's in the same conference and division there. And my prediction is this is going to shock you because I know you're a
Mhm.
Dallas fan. They're not going to make the playoffs this year.
How dare you?
Again. I know. What's going on over there? What kind of message is Jerry Jones sending when he trades his like all-world edge rusher? We're going to stop the run. Okay.
Mm. And what the message he's sending is it's my franchise and I'll cry if I want to. That's the message that Jerry Jones is sending. We're going to move on to hot seat leftovers. These are coaches that you suspect are on borrowed time heading into just week 1 of the NFL season. Maybe some leftovers from last year. I'm going to start you off here with Brian Daboll, New York Giants. I don't think that this was really a hard pick to make. The Giants are coming off back-to-back losing seasons. They were 3-14 last year, 6-11 the year before. I think another year in that range would all but assuredly put an end to Daboll's tenure there. A lot of changes this year. There is a bit more excitement this year, but in some ways that's almost like a double-edged sword, right? They've somehow managed to generate some excitement after back-to-back losing seasons, but that just means there's going to be more expectations to turn their fortunes around sooner rather than later. I don't see it happening.
So my hot seat coach might surprise you a little bit. I'm going to go with Kevin Stefanowski over in Cleveland. Now,
Wow.
should the Browns fire a 2-time NFL Coach of the Year? No. You'd have to be retarded to do that, right? We're talking about the Cleveland Browns. We're talking about Jimmy Haslam here. He isn't known for shrewd decision-making, right? So the Browns are going to be bad, right? We've got 40-year-old Joe Flacco apparently is going to quarterback this team. God bless Joe, but he's not Tom Brady. And this is a team that went 3-14 last year. So another awful losing season would be his fourth in 6 years. The Browns, they're not going to hire anybody better if they fire him. But this, again, is Haslam, and that's kind of what he does. So
Yeah, I know. When you told me this in the pre-show, I thought, how could you possibly say that? I think Kevin Stefanski is the best coach the Browns have had since they remade the Cleveland Browns. But you're right, they're still the Cleveland Browns. I think he's done an amazing job with what he has, but unfortunately for him, Joe Flacco caught lightning in a bottle a couple of years ago, and that was a couple of years ago.
Yeah. And the Browns, the Browns do Brown things.
I will give you a couple of extra leftovers. I kid you not when I say this. I think Mike McDaniel may not be long for this world as the coach of the Miami Dolphins. That team is built around his vision, and if Tua is healthy, Waddle's healthy, Tyreek is healthy, they're going to expect him to compete for the playoffs. If they finish with a losing record, I think he's done. And again, going back to earlier, Mike Tomlin, Pittsburgh Steelers, 18 consecutive winning seasons. That's historic. It truly is. But they don't want to be 9-8. They want to compete for championships. And this team's, I'm sorry, no, this team's not competing. They haven't recently. They're not going to this year. Moving on to Bon Voyage. Players you expect to see retire after this season, or at least they should. Who do you think ought to retire this year?
Well, I don't know that he necessarily should, but I think he's going to, and that's Mike Evans, wide receiver, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He tied last year Jerry Rice's streak for consecutive 10,000-yard seasons. I think that he would like to break that record.
Wait, hold on, 1,000-yard seasons, right?
Yeah,
if he had a 10, sorry. I don't know how many. I don't know how long the streak is. I'm consecutive. About the same as mine, but yeah, go ahead.
Right. 1,000-yard seasons. But yeah, I mean, I think that's a thing that he wants to do. And I think that he's talking like a guy who's ready to retire. He's flat out said he's year to year at this point. And he kind of seems to have this mentality that he wants to be a guy that goes out on top. I think he's not interested in being a guy that just hangs on for the sake of hanging on. So I do kind of expect him to retire this year with one caveat. If the Bucs are close to a Super Bowl and it looks like they might have the opportunity to run it back, I could see him staying around for another year to try to win that second ring. But barring that, I think he's going to go ahead and retire after this year and go out on top.
You know, he reminds me a lot of guys like the Terrell Owenses of the world, some of these other big body receivers that they're a handful to cover downfield. 'Cause he's a big guy, not just tall but broad. But also those big body receivers take a lot of hits, and he's shown it over the last few. I mean, when he's even moderately healthy, he's still one of the best receivers on the field. But yeah, I could definitely see that. I'm going to give you actually a quarterback roundup. I think we're getting ready to see a new era in the NFL, and it may not necessarily be in a good way. I think a lot of young quarterbacks coming up, which means a lot of old quarterbacks are going to be making room within the next year or so. I don't think a lot of the young quarterbacks coming up are necessarily that great. Maybe we have a defensive revival coming up in the NFL. But of course, Aaron Rodgers, we've already talked about him, 41 years old. My prediction is this year's a disaster. Matthew Stafford, we already touched on him. He's not as old as a Rodgers or a Flacco, but it's been a shoulder, it's been an elbow. Most recently, it's been a back. This guy couldn't even make it onto the sideline during the preseason. They did name him the starter for Week 1. We'll see how long that lasts. And then, of course, Joe Flacco. Yeah, right. I need one of those. Yeah. And finally, Joe Flacco, who didn't kind of have a warm spot in their heart a couple of years ago, seeing him, he already came out of retirement. He came out of retirement to play the end of that season for the Browns and kind of stuck around because it's like, hey, maybe I've still got it. I think this season's going to prove that no, it's time to head back to the house for him. Moving on, sophomore slump or leap. We got a list of players here. We want you to pick one player to have a sophomore slump this season and 1 year to take the sophomore leap. I'm going to start us off with the slump of Jaden Daniels, Washington Redskins. Now, let me say with the caveat, this guy won Offensive Rookie of the Year, right? I think he's a really good quarterback. I think Jaden Daniels is going to continue to be a good quarterback for years to come. But when you start off that hot in your rookie season, and you're going to be playing the Eagles a couple of times, they were close last year, but that also means that the level of competition's going up this year. Expectations go up this year. It just wouldn't be surprising to have a little bit of a slump after a hot start.
I actually agree with that. I would pick that as my for my slump as well, not to copycat, but he seems a good candidate. Again, not really knocking him, not saying that he's going to be not a great quarterback in the NFL, but it seems like everything came together, right? It was the perfect storm, and it's very rare that you get the perfect storm 2 years in a row.
Yeah, it reminds me of C.J. Stroud. I think C.J. Stroud will continue to be a good quarterback for years to come. And last year was a slump. In his defense, every receiver on his roster had like 2 broken legs. So hard to blame him for that. But there you go. The perfect storm doesn't always happen. My sophomore leap, we talked about it already. Here's the theme once again, Bo Nix. I think Denver is poised to make noise this year, in no small part because I think Bo Nix continues to build off of his rookie season. Not everyone was sold on this guy when he arrived in Mile High. You talked about this earlier, that he put up gaudy numbers at the end of his college career, but it kind of took him a while to get to that point. He bounced around a little bit. But Sean Payton thinks that he's found his guy, and I think Sean Payton still got it, and I tend to agree.
Yeah, that's another one of those quarterback-coach marriages that I think could be fruitful for a long time.
Yeah, I agree.
I think Michael Penix Jr. is going to take a big leap this year. We've already kind of discussed the reasons why, but you've got a guy with a lot of weapons around him, and a full year in the system, a full training camp, knowing that this is his team. I think he's set up for a really good leap forward this year.
All right, Mike, we're gonna close strong here. We're gonna do the Lucky 7 lightning round. I've got 7 questions for you to wrap up the show, and then we're gonna do our picks. We're gonna get out of here. Starting off with question number 1: which of these is more likely? Aaron Rodgers leads the Steelers to the postseason, or Aaron Rodgers doesn't finish the season as the Steelers' starting quarterback?
I would say it's more likely that he does not finish the season as the starting quarterback. And it would not shock me if he's injured again. I mean, dude's old.
Yeah.
And as an old person, I know that you're subject to injuries. So I think that's far more likely. As we've already discussed, I don't see the Steelers, making some kind of big playoff run, even with a healthy Aaron Rodgers. So,
as a spry young fellow like myself, I wouldn't know what you're talking about. Yeah. Moving on to question number 2. What rookie with an asterisk, because McCarthy's not technically a rookie, which rookie quarterback will win the most games this season? Is it A, Cam Ward, B, J.J. McCarthy, C, Jackson Dart, or D, Tyler Shuck?
I got to go with J.J. McCarthy, and partly because, as you said, he's not really a rookie. Second year in a system. But really, more than that, and I don't think that the Vikings are going to be a great football team this year, but he does have more weapons around him than some of those other guys do. And I think just based on that, you're throwing to Jefferson. That's helpful. So I think that of those 4, I think JJ's going to probably have the best year.
I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'm going to predict that Jackson Dart is the best quarterback on that list, but he's not starting the season. Old man Russell Wilson's starting the season, so Jackson Dart's going to have to wait just a little while longer to get his opportunity. Right. Which player will finish with more yards from scrimmage, Travis Hunter or Ashton Jeanty?
I'm going to go with Jeanty. And I say that primarily because I feel like that they're primarily going to use Hunter on defense, and put him in situationally in as a receiver. But that's just
so. I think it's overwhelmingly the opposite as far as Hunter goes. I think he'll almost never play on defense. He's listed as a wide receiver on the depth chart. The problem is that he's wide receiver for the Jacksonville Jaguars. that's one of his key issues.
I've said that I think the Jags are going to be better.
You have said that. He still has to actually catch the passes from Trevor Lawrence. Travis Hunter in the preseason, and I don't mean to let the preseason, really paint your perspective too much, but when he was in on defense, he literally didn't record a stat. And on offense, he had more drops than catches. That's not a great start to your NFL debut. I think Ashton Genty, he plays for the Raiders. Not exactly a much better start to your career than playing for the Jaguars. The difference is the Raiders have Pete Carroll as their coach now, and Pete Carroll likes to run the ball. I think Ashton Genty's going to be running the ball a lot. So just purely by volume, I think Genty's going to get it. Question number 4. Is this the year, Mike Maharrey, that the NFL will finally end racism?
No, they did that last year.
Okay.
It's over. We have no more racism. We're good.
Glad to hear it. Question number 5. Which first-year head coach will have the best season? Is it A, Ben Johnson of the Bears, B, Liam Cohen of the Jaguars, C, Kellen Moore of the Saints, D, Brian Schottenheimer of the Cowboys, or E, Aaron Glenn of the Jets?
Well, in the name of consistency, I've got to go with Liam Cohen since I picked the Jags as my up-and-coming AFC team.
Okay. I'm going to say Brian Schottenheimer, not because he's going to be a good coach, because he won't, and not because the Cowboys are going to be a good team, because they also won't, but because the Cowboys just have way too much talent to go from being a 11-12 win team to the season they had last year with their backup quarterback to stay as a 5 or 6 win team. I think they're going to win more games. I think a lot of these other coaches just have more work ahead of them. We'll put it that way. Question number 6. Which team do you think will have the number 1 pick in the 2026 NFL draft? Which, of course, is a positive way for us to say, who do you think's dead last?
I'm going to go with the New Orleans Saints.
Oh, you said New Orleans. That's going to piss off the New Orleans fans, but please continue.
Yes, well, sometimes we just gotta. I don't like them because they're again, in the Bucs division, and I've just never been much fond of the Saints. So, F them. Anyway, yeah, I don't think they're going to be very good, and I heard that they're going to start Spencer Rattler, and I have never been a Spencer Rattler fan. I think the kid's a head case, and that's just a team that seems to be on a downward trajectory. They're old, they're beat up. And they don't have quarterbacks. So, yeah.
For the same reason that I didn't pick Kellen Moore on the last question is why my pick for this would also be the Saints. I think Kellen Moore's a good coach. I think they are years away from being a serious team again. I will say, as a backup pick, the Titans got the number 1 pick last year. I said all off season long, I wouldn't pick a quarterback. I didn't think any of the quarterbacks were very good. I'm not going to argue about who goes where. I don't think any of them are franchise guys, and that includes Cam Ward. The Titans are not improved, and I think Cam Ward's a bust. So the Titans could repeat, but in the worst possible way. Finally, question number 7. What is your way too early Super Bowl projection? Who over who?
Well, I've already said Detroit in the NFC. And
okay.
So we'll stick with that because I'm going to at least be consistent within a 40-minute show. But I think they're going to go and they're going to win the Super Bowl over the Cincinnati Bengals. I think the Bengals put it together, represent the AFC, but Detroit wins that world championship and they burn down Detroit.
I would love to see Detroit win, and I would love to see Detroit burn down. Although I would feel awful to see the Bengals lose another Super Bowl, Maharrey. Like they're a long-suffering franchise as well. I'm gonna go with my theme pick. I think that this is the year that Lamar Jackson and the Ravens represent. I think they make the Super Bowl, and it's going to be the Bird Bowl. I think the Ravens win Harbaugh another Super Bowl over the Philadelphia Eagles, who return but don't repeat, just like last year's Chiefs. On that note, we're going to wrap up here with the picks. We actually have some interesting games in week 1.
Some tough picks this week.
We're going to start off with Thursday Night Football tomorrow night, Mike Maharrey. The Dallas Cowboys are going on the road to play the Philadelphia Eagles as they hang their Super Bowl banner. The Eagles are 7.5-point favorites. Who do you got?
That's a big number, but I'm going to still go with Philly. because I think Dallas is bad. It's in Philadelphia.
Mhm.
And yeah, I think Philly wins it going away.
I think if Philadelphia were 16.5-point favorites, I would still pick the Philadelphia Eagles. They're going to win by 17. Tampa Bay Buccaneers are 2.5-point road favorites, playing a big division, week 1 division matchup with the Atlanta Falcons in Atlanta. What do you think?
I think that Atlanta's going to win this game. I think they'll win it outright. I think that they're going to be tight. I think it's going to go down to the wire between Atlanta and Tampa Bay. And I feel like they're going to split home and home. Tampa Bay starting off kind of in the hole. They're down their all-pro left tackle, and that's going to change their offense a lot. They're going to end up having to hold a tight end in to chip. I think they're going to have a little bit of trouble with Atlanta's pass rush. And so I see the Bucs going down in week 1, but it's going to be close throughout the year. So I'm not being just a total negative ninny.
I do agree. I think we both predict that the Falcons might be a team trending up, and it starts here by protecting their home field against the Bucs. Detroit Lions are going on the road to play at Green Bay Packers, another huge divisional game in week 1. Last year, Green Bay had nothing for Detroit. When Detroit was healthy, they killed the Packers. When Detroit was hurt, they still beat the Packers. And yet the Packers are 2.5-point favorites to start the season. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's a really weird line, and I think Detroit will cover that and probably win the game. I maybe it's the mystique of Lambeau. Maybe that's what they're looking. But this is Lambeau in September, not Lambeau in January. So, yeah.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I think if there's one Achilles heel to Detroit, it's that they need to repeat as number 1 seeds because they want to play in a dome. Lambeau in the first week of September is pretty nice. So I think it's going to be fine. I'm going to take Detroit as well. I don't think Micah Parsons magically makes Green Bay a better team than the Lions in one season. And finally, Sunday Night Football. Last year, Baltimore played the Buffalo Bills in the regular season. They won 35-10. Blowout win for the Ravens. In the postseason, they played in the playoffs. The Bills won by 2. It's another one of those, the Ravens have the yips at the end of the year games. And now we're having a matchup, first week of the regular season again, Baltimore Ravens at Buffalo Bills. The Bills are 1.5-point favorites. Pretty close to a pick'em. What do you think?
This one's tough for me. I could see this game going either way. I'm going to go with Buffalo just because they're playing at home.
Okay, I think that's fair. I think Buffalo's a good team at home, but of course this is Buffalo the first week of September, not Buffalo at the end of the year. I actually think that Baltimore is going to get their vengeance for the postseason. I think that Baltimore is going to... This game's going to be more akin... This is regular season Baltimore versus regular season Buffalo Bills.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if it's going to be 35-10, but I actually think Baltimore handles the Bills in this game. I think the Bills are still a good team. I think the Bills still win their division. I think the Bills lose this game. I think them being a 1.5-point favorite is a steal. I think the Ravens are going to win by 2 possessions.
You almost convinced me, but I'm going to stick with Buffalo.
All right. Mike, do you have a final thought?
I do have a final thought. Hockey.
Ooh.
Training camps open in 2 weeks. That is
wow.
all.
Every single year we do literally this exact same show, and every single year I say, football season just started. How is hockey starting? We literally do this every single year. My final thought is, Mike Maharrey, we live in a world where the Alabama Crimson Tide and the Notre Dame Fighting Irish combine for 0 wins. Perhaps this is the greatest timeline after all.
Yes, indeed. What a time to be alive, as my stepdaughter would say.
Mike, thanks for joining me once again. Guys, we're going to be back to wrap up the show right after this commercial break. Don't go away. If you're enjoying tonight's show, consider supporting the program by becoming a member of our Patreon. That's over at patreon.com/Alan Mosley. like our Facebook page, facebook.com/Alan Mosley TV. You can follow me on Twitter, twitter.com/Alan Mosley TV. Subscribe to our YouTube page. It's youtube.com/Alan Mosley TV. But if you're more of a listener than a watcher, you get us on your favorite podcasting platform of choice thanks to Spotify. It's Too Late with Alan Mosley or Alan Mosley TV. Hey, Dave.
Hey,
How you
wrapping
doing?
things up here. Doing all
Yeah.
right. It's the most wonderful time of the month.
Is it?
Paying bills.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
traumatizing.
Listen. I just don't do that anymore.
Oh, I didn't
Yeah, I
even
just
think of
don't. Yeah, I just don't. What are they gonna do? What are you gonna do?
that.
Right? Ain't gonna do
Got
nothing.
no power here.
Yeah, I just won't. You ever think about that? You ever think about what, like when they come to knock on your door? Just say, yeah, well, I'm not gonna.
Yeah, I don't want to.
Yeah, yeah. So, you know.
So subscribe.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, we better hit those subscriptions and Patreon, PayPal, all that stuff. We're gonna do an after party
Yeah,
because
predetermined.
yeah, Dave is contractually obligated to do like at least half an hour of on-air
Work.
content, and right now he's up to about 45 seconds. So we're gonna we're gonna
along.
schedule Dave. We're gonna force over for Dave today.
Ah,
And
okay.
yeah, but yeah, I knew you weren't even. Oh
Yeah.
no, shucks. Yeah. Dave, do you have a final thought?
Oh man, love Maharrey. I always think
It's
I'm
so
saying it wrong and then I
disrespectful to
forget how to
him.
say it right. I know.
Yeah.
I get confused.
Okay.
Yeah, Mike's awesome. Sports ball's fun.
We've been over this before. So
know we
Maharrey's
have.
bald. He's bald, right?
Oh, my hairy head.
And that's yes. Thoughts from Maharrey.
Okay.
Yes. There you go.
Yeah,
So
there
you
we go.
remembered
Now I
it. Yeah. Okay. All right.
I got a
okay.
trigger now.
Okay. All right. Guys, thank you so much for watching another episode of It's Too Late, and we will see you next week. But actually, we'll see them in like a few minutes. Yeah. Yeah, we got to regroup from all the work we just put in. Here at the... Yeah. Ugh. I've got, don't you have a fortune cookie? Don't you have some? Oh, you ran out? Oh. Oh well.